We've got Wee-Yeong in from Miomo to talk about parenting and some tips when it comes to teen moods. So good morning, Wee-Yeong. Thank you for coming in again.
Morning, guys. So good to be here.
Look, this is an evergreen topic, right? Teenagers, their emotions, and every parent's had to deal with them. But there's a certain mystery about how to confront them, what to let go, what to talk about. Where should we start with this conversation this morning?
Absolutely. I think before we went live, we were talking about the differences between boys and girls and also personalities. I think that's the first thing to acknowledge, that there's no one size fits all, but there are some principles that can apply.
Okay. Well, I need some principles to apply right now because my nearly 13-year-old, I think she's 13 in like a week or two.
Yeah.
She is a lovely kid and normally quite reasonable when I sort of ask her to like move her bag and, you know, do her homework or go hang up her uniform. But I've noticed that since going through adolescence, sometimes just a small ask involves like an eruption of a response. So she can be like in a rage for no reason. Even a little thing that her sister can say can send her like shouting around the room. And I'm wondering, like, in those instances where you can see clearly they're going through some kind of hormonal shift because it might be that particular week or whatever. What are you to do in those instances? Because on the one hand, when you talk about parenting, and from my experience, like you want to get alongside them when they're like a toddler and you want to let them feel their feelings. But then when they're at this age, it's sort of like that can actually really aggravate them as a teen that's like wanting their space. So do you like poke the bear by like, oh, but I just want to help you, go away, Mum? Or do you just give them their space? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. Very good question. I think there are a couple of things to consider. There's lots of things to consider, a couple of things to talk about. Firstly, I think that understanding biology is very important of what's going on. As you said, there's hormones. There's also neurodevelopment, which is connected, right? Your brains and your hormones. In the season of adolescence, for boys and girls, they develop at different speeds. There's the part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which basically helps you make rational decisions. And then there's the amygdala, which basically helps you take risks. And you go, woohoo, you jump off buildings with bungee
Let
cords.
me guess, the prefrontal isn't quite developed, but the amygdala's firing hard.
And neuroscience would say that the prefrontal cortex is actually closed for renovations for at least 10 years.
That makes sense why the reasoning isn't quite there when you try to say, look, the reason I'm saying this is because I care about you.
Yeah. And so I guess the second thing to talk about is exercising empathy and good timing. And so I guess in any sort of connection with humans, whether it be, premenopausal, teen years, it's really about understanding those times where these situations can happen. And as you said earlier, sometimes it happens after the fact. It's like, whoops, it's happened. And so exercising empathy is kind of like, let's leave it for now. And then when things calm down a little bit, just to go, hey, can I talk to you about something, yesterday, were you feeling a little bit off? Showing that empathy to go rather than, well, you shouldn't shout at your sister, or you should just speak nicely to your parents, which I'm always tempted to do because I'm the parent, you're the kid, you should respect me. Rather than, what's going on? Are you okay? And so for a mum to a daughter, I suppose you've been through that yourself at some stage, to go, hey, I've been through that and it must feel really strange, right?
Yeah.
And then go, if it ever happens again, right? Like I have a friend that has this little system. She's got a little flag that she'll put up to go,
a red flag?
like this week, stay away from me, and or just kind of like warning signs to the husband and the family to go, I'm a little bit on edge potentially this week. So yeah, you know what I mean? And so then hopefully the teenager will go, okay, I kind of know what to do next time. And, I'm not a bad person for shouting, but it's part of what's going on in me. And then I'll know what to do next time.
Right. Counter argument to this then. Let's play the other side of this, because as true as all the stuff is, and as much as we agree with all the stuff in principle, how do we balance that against the fact that it doesn't really matter how you feel about a thing, there's still certain behavior that's not acceptable? So it's very easy to hear this stuff and be like, oh, well, I'm, prepubescent and I had a tough day and my sister said this and da-da-da-da. that may well be true, but even as adults, we know
Yeah.
you don't have an open license because of sufficient quote unquote reason. So how do we balance an expectation of behavior versus this kind of understanding we're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's that whole unpacking it over time, right? So obviously breaking windows and, throwing laptops isn't a good thing. And sometimes there's the natural consequences. You've got the natural consequences of behavior, right? Like if you break your laptop, you just don't have laptops to work with. And so unfortunately, you're going to suffer for a little bit. We're not just going to replace your laptop because you broke it. That's the natural consequences. Then the other agreed consequences is like, well, these behaviors aren't, they're not on in our family. And we recognize there's a reason by why you feel that way or you might behave that way, but we've agreed on this, we've discussed this, and there are consequences. So that's a whole thing about discussing boundaries and all that in non-conflict situations.
Yeah. So again, like you mentioned, give that child a bit of space.
Yeah.
And then approach it when they've calmed down a bit or the heat of the moment has lapsed, maybe the next day. And I found like when I'm quite honest with my kids, particularly the older one, because I feel like she's a little bit closer to understanding, I say, look, I understand that you were tired and stressed out yesterday and this happened, but I'm still feeling quite sad that you said those things to me.
Right.
So I would really appreciate an apology because that's not really how we're meant to behave towards one another.
100%.
And so just kind of approaching it and saying like, that's how the behavior has landed and what they can do to like remediate the situation and hopefully not do it in the future.
Yeah. And sometimes I like to use myself as an example to go, hey, look, I can tend to do this as well. And, because when we use teaching moments, whether it's with adults or with employees, it's when we just bring their behavior as the sole focus of conversation, it becomes you're the bad person and I'm always right. It's more like going, hey, I let's talk about that situation. And then you give a little example to go, I do some of this myself and I know it's not easy and I'm trying this, but I need you to work with me because that is not on. And what can you do? Right. So it's a two-way street.
Something that strikes me actually as you say this too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here because you guys are the established parents and I'm the rookie looking in from the outside. But the importance of doing this also as a team, between, mum and dad, because the idea of having that conversation later, it's the same thing that we face as adults where we think, oh, I need to talk about this with the person later on. But then later on when, the seas are calm again and the sun's shining, you're like, oh, do I really want to bring that up? Do I really want to revisit it? And then you just don't. Yeah. And you perpetuate the same thing. So even maybe having that conversation with, mum or dad as the case may be and saying, hey, look, we saw how kid X behaved today. Let's address this. You can remind me if I haven't said something or,
Great
just
idea.
having that kind of support so that, you will have
like
some prompt.
Bookmarking that moment.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's a good term. Look, parenting is very hard. Like even just normal relationships, right? Everyone has a different way of handling conflict. My wife's way of handling conflict is not to talk about it. Yeah. My way in my family is we talk about it immediately.
Yes.
And so she just finds it really strange how I handle conflict, and I find it strange how she handles conflict. And over 21 years of marriage, we've come to somewhere in the middle. So these principles, they're important, but they're not easy. Yeah. Right. And so, as you said, Andrew, it's you have to work as a team. And so, obviously, not every family has that luxury. Sometimes there's blended families, and there's single parent families, and that gets really difficult.
Yeah, well, we understand that it can be challenging and sometimes you do need a little bit of extra support, perhaps externally, and that's where Miomo can come in. So, Wee-Yeong, where can people get more information if they'd like to reach out or access your resources?
Yeah, sure. Our website is www.miomo.com, miomo.com, and visit us on Instagram and Facebook as well, Miomo NZ.
Nice one. Wee-Yeong, you're a legend. We love these chats. And again, if you want to access these resources, there's tons available. MIOMO, miomo.org.nz.
Thanks, Wee-Yeong.
Amazing. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss the next video.
We'll see you in the next one.